Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Anne Williams, and as Mike says, I'm the Administration and Education Executive with APHA, which is the Animal and Plant Health Association. And I'd just like to thank the Federation for inviting me here today to speak with you. So my part of the presentation is on addressing pesticide prevalence in water bodies. So I'm going to do that by talking you through the phenoxyacid monitoring and stewardship programme that we're involved in. So first of all, I'll just go through a bit of background for those of you who may not be aware of the phenoxyacids chemistry and what they are. It takes in actives such as MCPA, 2,4-D, 2,4-DB, metaprop-P and dichloropropyl. Now these are a group of herbicides, they're a group of chemicals that control weeds, and the phenoxyacid chemistry falls into the category of selective herbicides. So what that means is these herbicides can control weeds, but they won't damage the surrounding grass. There is other weed killers that would fall into the category of total herbicides, and they'll kill all plants that they're applied to, whether it's a weed or a grass. So that's why people need to be mindful of the products they're using and to make sure that they're using them appropriately. So just to give you a couple of examples from an agricultural point of view, there's 3 examples of products that would contain MCPA, the likes of Agritox, Agrotone and Mortone, and they are widely used within the agricultural industry. But these chemistries are also found in amenity and the likes of home and garden. If you take products here such as Evergreen or Green Force, which are lawn feeds, weed and moss killers, you'll see the Evergreen pack contains both MCPA and metaprop-P. So these are chemicals that are used widely throughout a lot of areas within the country. To look at a bit of the history on the chemistry, these chemicals were introduced in 1946, and by the mid-1950s they would have been widely used throughout Ireland. They're used widely for the control of rushes and other weeds that will be in grassland areas, and again in amenity or garden areas, the likes of lawns, football fields, golf courses. Just to give you some examples of situations where they'd be used, you'll see the picture on the left there is probably a typical Irish rural scene of a field where there's rushes dotted in and out throughout the field. The photo on the right hand side would show a field that is heavily infested with rushes. So if the rushes aren't controlled in some form or another, they will virtually take over the land. To look at it from an amenity point of view as well, if you look at the 2 pictures, the one on the left would show a lawn which has the buttercups, the daisies and other plants in it. The lawn on the right hand side is obviously one that is well maintained, manicured and would be free from all types of weeds. Now, as I mentioned before, the phenoxyacid herbicides fall into the selective category, and it's important for people and the end user to be aware of what products they're using in the situation they're using them in, and that they're using them appropriately. You'll see from the photo on the right hand side where obviously a total herbicide has been used on the grass verge, and the grass as well as the weeds has been practically killed off. So it is the message that we try and get out to end users to ensure that they're using the product appropriately and safely. So the question is, why would we use these herbicides in the first place? If you look at the trial that was done last year, the field on the left-hand side, is a field, as you can see, there's a lot of rushes spread throughout the field. There was a section of the field was sprayed off, and another section, the rushes would have been cut. So I'm not too sure just how clear it shows on the picture, but on the one on the right that was done then on the 10th of December, the square in the middle where it was sprayed, you can see there was a clear killing of the rushes, and they're all gone in that area. The area just here to the near right, you can make out that there is a bit of regrowth of the rushes coming back. So while cutting them can be effective, it may not be as effective as using a herbicide on them. So just to recap, the phenoxyacids, they've been in use for about 80 years. They've been very effective in the use of weed control. So the question would be, was it a problem with using them? So if we have a look now at the water situation, and the EU have set limits for water in terms of the nitrates, the chemicals and the silts that can be found in water. There is also drinking water limits been set and environmental quality standards. So in terms of the drinking water limits that have been set, the EU has set a limit of 0.1 micrograms per litre, which in essence is 1 part in 10 billion. So you'd kind of think, well, what does that actually look in reality? So I'll just take you to the next slide, just to show you kind of the equivalence of what 1 part in 10 billion might look like. It would be the equivalent of 1 drop of water in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, which is 375,000 litres. It would be 1 stem in 1,111 hay bales, 1 baked bean in about 2 million cans, or 1 second in 317 years. So it's literally a minuscule amount. This is not a health-based limit. It was a political decision that was taken in 1980 to use the 0.1 micrograms per litre as the European drinking water's limit. So in essence then, it's a surrogate for 0. It's literally a minute limit. Then in terms of the environmental quality standard, in Ireland at the moment there is none set for the phenoxyacid chemistry. As I mentioned as well, the European limit for the drinking water isn't a health-based standard. The World Health Organization does have a health-based value of 0.7 micrograms per litre. So it's on the assumption that a 60 kilo person consuming 2 litres of drinking water per day, there's a health-based value of 0.7 milligrams per litre that can be derived from MCPA. So when you compare that to the European limit, which is 0.01 micrograms per litre, the WHO limit is 700 micrograms per litre. So in essence, it's 7,000 times higher than the limit that the EU has set for the drinking water limit. But the limits are the limits, and the EU limit of 0.1 micrograms per litre is what has been set for the drinking water limits. The drinking water does be tested, so over time exceedances in drinking water limits for pesticides have been recorded. So I'll just go through a graph. It's this Uisce Éireann's figures. So it'll be Uisce Éireann that will be doing a lot of the testing and sampling of the drinking water in Ireland. And this is just a graph of their findings for a number of years, from 2017 all the way up to part of last year. So if we look at it in an overall sense, there appears to be an overall downward trend in the number of exceedances that's been found in drinking water, albeit there is a couple of ups and downs within the years. But overall there was 142 in 2017, which would have come down to about 54 in 2024. So it is, you could look at it as a positive trend, and there is a reduction. If we look at it from the point of view of total pesticides versus MCPA, the total pesticides is the blue bars and the MCPA are green bars. And again, there is a slight downward trend. There was an increase in exceedances found last year, particularly in the total pesticides, but this year to date, the figures are looking more positive. So APHA is involved in the phenoxyacid monitoring and stewardship programme. The catchments that are monitored are identified by reference from the Uisce Éireann sampling analysis. The monitoring was first commenced in 2018 and has been continued annually since then. The monitoring takes place from a period of April to October every year. Part of it is weekly and other parts of it is fortnightly. The samples are taken, they're analysed by INAB accredited laboratories, and there's approximately 800 samples taken and analysed each year. So where exactly are we doing the monitoring? As I said, the catchments are identified through the results that are found from the Uisce Éireann water analysis. The catchments that have been monitored would be Lough Forbes in Longford, Belturbet in Cavan, Newcastle West and Foynes in Limerick, Kilkenny, Newport in Mayo, Greenmount in Louth, and Hackettstown in Carlow. Some of them, such as Newport, would have been taken off the EPA's remedial action list, as they would have been cleared from drinking water exceedances for a period of time. So we no longer monitor Newport. Loch Forbes, likewise, would have been taken off the remedial action list, but it has been a bit of a problematic catchment in that it's a large catchment and there has been a large number of exceedances, so we still monitor a small section of that. We've reduced the sampling points down to 6. And then the likes of Greenmount and Hackettstown would have come onto the monitoring programme in recent years. So the reasons behind doing the monitoring is to gain a deeper insight of catchment behaviour, and it's to get the information and the best practice measures down to the people on the ground, to the advisors, the farmers, the end users. And the monitoring over the years then allows us to monitor the progress to see if we are making improvements within the catchment, if we're reducing the number of exceedance that's been found. And it's just in this, the support of the people in the catchment that's living and working and are serviced by the water supply to ensure that they have the information to use the herbicides for the best practice and to protect the waterways. So I'm just going to look at 2 catchments and give you an example of 2 catchments we've been monitoring and also the results that have been found from the catchments. So the first one, as I say, is Newport in Mayo. The map there on the right-hand side shows Newport right down on the left of the map, and then the catchment spreads out then across the map. The purple dots within the catchment are the sampling points that we would have taken each sample of water from. So just to give you a look at how our results are shown, then from the catchment, this is a graph, a typical graph of results. The column on the left-hand side going down is the sampling points. The one at the top will be starting nearest the extraction point for that catchment, and then the samples move out down through the catchment. And then the columns that move along is the weeks of sampling. So just to give you an explanation for the colour coding of the chart, the red indicates an exceedance, so it's a reading that has come in over the 0.1 micrograms per litre. The amber colouring is a reading that has come in between 0.05 and less than 0.1, and the green then is anything up to 0.049 micrograms per litre. So you can see from this report from 2021 that there is a number of exceedances that's been picked up throughout the year in the Newport catchment. As I said, the first line across the top, that sample point is a sample point nearest the extraction point. So if we see a high number of exceedances in this sampling point, it indicates that there is a higher risk of Uisce Éireann's sampling picking up an exceedance in the drinking water sampling. Another trend that can be noticed from some of our reports in the charts is the likes of, if you see an exceedance further out the catchment, if you notice there's a couple of columns of red on some of the weeks where an exceedance was picked up out in the catchment, and you can see how it has subsequently caused the samples further down the catchment to exceed as well. If we look at the results then for the following year for that catchment, you can see there's an improvement in the number of exceedances, and again, if we look at 2023, there is a massive improvement on the number of exceedances compared to 2021. So how is this achieved? And as a result of that, the Newport catchment hadn't picked up any exceedances in the Uisce Éireann drinking water sampling. And once it's free from exceedances for a consecutive 12 months, it's taken off their remedial action list. And how is this good progress achieved? There's a couple of things around the Newport catchment. It is a small geographical catchment. There's a very dedicated Teagasc advisor in that area, and she's been very proactive in going out and talking with farmers, in speaking with farmers, and is frequently disseminating the best management practices to the users on the ground. The farmers within this catchment has responded quite positively to this work and are implementing the best practice processes. So it does show that when the relevant stakeholders all come together and they do the right thing, that the herbicides can be used safely and the water can be protected. So is this all good news? The simple answer is no. So the second one is just the bell turbot. Catchment, it's a larger catchment up in Cavan, and you can see there's a large number of exceedances within this catchment. That was the report for 2023. The report for 2024 is similar. There's probably a slight improvement, but it's still a large number of exceedances. To look at the figures behind the catchment, from 2021 to 2024, you could say overall there is a decrease in the number of exceedances. It went from 114 down to 72. So that's a 37% decrease. Albeit there was an increase during 2023, but this was then reduced again in 2024. So there's a 2022 decrease between 23 and 24. So there is good work being done, but there's still more to do. So in terms of getting the information out, the stewardship programme, what does this involve? There's several measures that's been used around the country. One would be the likes of farm walks and demonstrations. This is an example of one that was in the Suck Valley, where advisors would go out and speak with farmers. They'll do practical demonstration with a tractor and a sprayer to show proper application of the products, timings, to make sure sprayers are calibrated correctly, that the right nozzles are being used, etc., to give farmers the most up-to-date and best practice information. There's also a number of booklets after being printed as well on the likes of drainage, leaching, point sources. There's copies of these booklets available from the AFA office. AFA would also own this demonstration sprayer. This is used for demonstrations purposes. The likes of Clayton College would have had it on loan, where they've used it to demonstrate the different types of nozzles that can be used, to inform people to use the correct type of nozzle depending on where they're spraying or the product they're using, to make sure the nozzles are calibrated correctly. We can put a dye into that sprayer to show how to clean and rinse the sprayer correctly after use, and how to protect water courses as much as possible. The product companies have also involved in a number of campaigns such as neck collars, which are put on their products to highlight being aware of water, being aware of buffer zones, the maximum rate to be used in the product, just to highlight the importance to the end user of protecting our waterways. Campaigns have also been run at meetings, the likes of this rush control to protect the waterways from contamination. Information meetings would have been held, and the campaigns would also have been run on social media. So it's using every avenue we have to promote the good practice and to get the information out to the people on the ground and to the end user. Another example would be where a company has put together a notebook and just had the logo of Be Water Aware on the front of it to remind users to protect the waterways. So I'll just finish the presentation then just with a couple of slides on our catchment programme for 2025. That is just a sample plan for this year. As I said, it is run from April to October, so it started on the week 15, which was the 7th of April, and it is now at the end of September. For the catchments that we are sampling this year, there are 7 catchments in total spread throughout the country. The Deal, we're sampling 9 points. Belturbet, we're sampling 12. Foynes, we're sampling 5. As I mentioned Loch Forbes before, we would have been sampling a larger number of sample points. It has since been taken off the EPA's remedial action list. So we're just sampling 6 points, plus we take a sample from the lake as well. Greenmount and Louth was recently added to the programme. We do 8 sampling points throughout that, and Hackettstown we do 4. The field then we just do 1. So it's a total of 45 sampling points we do throughout those catchments. And that's run for 18 weeks. So it's a total of 810 samples are analysed and collected during the year. This analysis is then further complemented by the additional sampling and analysis that is done by the Federation. Our report and the charts are shared with the relevant stakeholders in real time, and then there's a summary report presented to the National Pesticides and Drinking Water Action Group meetings that take place a number of times during the year. So I'd like to thank you all for your attention, and I'd welcome any questions and comments.